close some stuff out to make this run smoother. I was like, I'm on time, and then realized that I should have taken care of one or two other things prior. So anyway, what I worked on yesterday was this loop, which it's running a little bit low on frame rate. It should pick up in a moment or two. Once stuff sort of settles a tiny bit, I can quit out of Photoshop. Don't need that running right this moment. Stuff's running at very low frame rate. That's up and again. Let's see if we can get back to double digits. Boom, boom, boom. Almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there. Okay, now we're at 30. It just took a second at the front end of things. But yeah, so yesterday worked on these loops, and I like the texture of when the lines go vertically for a second, and there is red that goes across those strips of whiteout tape, which whiteout I believe is a registered trademark. It is. So every time I say it, it's given advertisement to Bic. Anyway, yeah. So what I'd like to do today, I think, is focus on those vertical lines and just have that be across the board. Where things are at in the long form animation, it's towards the tail end. I've got like a song left, or like 1 2 to 3 minute section left, and I want to have it be chaotic, and then the following 1 or 2 after this, which will probably close out the 45-minute animation, I want it to be moving back towards the initial bit, and the initial bit is just a circle going up and down. So my plan today is transition out of this solid red done in the marker, the alcohol marker, and just have vertical lines, and that will be the standalone, and then have some color come in on top of those and scan front and back of that. Maybe not front and back, maybe just one color or one side, or maybe it's like 1 2 3. I'll figure it out, but yeah, that's my plan. So first things first, I need to do a transition of the red/pink marker to have the vertical lines coming down. So that's next. Alright, that's what this one looks like for front and back. It's a little less active than I thought it was going to be. Looks more like some worms or something crawling down the distance. I think part of that is the fact that the white strips are solidly there the full time. But I still like it as something that it'll serve a purpose. Hello, Alba. The purpose of it is a section of a song that's like that it has a repetitious and semi-constant sound to it, and so this can be an easy build-up to that by having the individual sections, because the red comes in on the middle, and then middle right, middle left, middle right right, middle left left, and so it can build up in that way, shape, and form. I'm gonna do one more GIF before doing my spiel and such. I'll leave that up. You can't see what I'm doing right now because I'm just working Photoshop to the side. But I do make my own music. I just want to see what this white section looks like. I make my own music. I started doing that a few years ago when COVID stuff started up and streaming platforms were getting a little bit more strict about DMCA stuff, where like it would limit the length that you could stream on Instagram if you were using copywritten music. And so I started making my own to just have background music for that, and I've been keeping up with it pretty consistently for the last 2 years. More recently, I've been trying to I'm not sure what your question is. Do you make with the music already? The music that's playing is stuff that I made. The cassette that's visible. Let me say this out 1 second. I'll be able to concentrate more on answering your question. This is actually a one white. For the long form animations, I've made the songs ahead of time, and the animation, it's an in-between. The animation is reflective of the music, but it's not exactly timed out to it. Let me turn this down. The music that's playing in the background is just odds and ends, but and it's not timed out to this animation at all. I have some music that I'm talking all over the way. Okay, so depends what you're asking about specifically as to how the animation and the music go about one another. For most of the posts that I'm making that are going to Instagram and stuff like that, I just have a bunch of music that I've made, and I choose something that pretty much fits the feel of the animation. In the instance of what is happening for a long form thing that a lot of these are a part of, is I made a mix that's about 45 minutes long, and all of the entirety of that mix is the same BPM. It's all 120 beats per minute, which means that it's one beat every half second. And these loops are 30 frames long at 15 frames per second, which makes them 2 seconds long. So when they all fit the rhythm of the music that I made, if you were to run this on a loop, you would notice it timing out to the long form music that I'm working with. And so all of these have like various elements to them that are running on the same rhythm as the music that I've made, but the individual sections and stuff, I'm editing the animations because I have like 5 iterations of whatever animation that I'm working with. I'm editing them together, so these are built in a way that they can edit together and change how they interact with the music. So the long form thing that I'm working on is sort of in between stuff. So like this very loose animation that you're seeing of just the white sort of moving towards and then separating back out, that's the same. Sorry, I'm not explaining this super well. These are loops, so they all start in the same way, and there are elements that come in between the first and last frame that change the feel of it. And this sort of came about because I got asked about doing live visuals, and the animation that I do this is not so time consuming, but for live visuals you need to have some ability to deal with the improvisation and the like live elements that come in a live performance has to be flexible, and most traditional animation isn't very flexible for what it can represent in a live setting. So I created a bunch of loops that all started and ended the same way. So the idea was like you can run a loop for however long. If like someone's going on a solo for a while or something like that, you can just repeat the same animation over and over again. But you can also introduce new animations because they all start and end with the same frame, the same like entry point. It's like you have a central location and everything starts and ends here, but maybe you have something that's running over here and something that's running over here and running over here. And if this is running back here, now you can change position and start this loop, or you can go this way and that way and this way and that way. Let me draw this out. I think it would maybe translate better. So if you have, this is your starting point, and everything starts from here, and you have one loop that goes like this, and it's the red one that can run, and it all starts and ends in the same position. But then you could also have a loop that is a green one, and it starts here, but then it goes over here. And once you're back at this beginning position, you could either do the green one, or you can do the red one, or you can do the green one twice and then the red one once, or the red one 4 times and the green one whatever time. And then you have another loop that's like weird, does its own bit here, and that takes longer. But if you're going, you're all running like this, you can change your location and go on this one and then switch over to this one. And that's the idea, is that like you could have a VJ or whatever sort of responding to what is going on. Ended up not happening, but I made some long form stuff that sort of built out of it, where you have things that are looping, but they aren't looping indefinitely. I don't really like things that loop indefinitely for something that's like long form, but I also don't like having to create original frames for 3 minutes of animated video, let alone 45. And so having all of these loops that start at a spot, and you can like change the direction and repeat something that reflects the music as it's running on that consistent pace. This one isn't the best example of that because this one would definitely take longer, but the ones where it's just like starting and ending in the same spot, and then something comes in that is something new, and then it goes away, and then it comes in. So if you have a rhythm in that like 120 beats per minute, which ends up having 4 beats every 2 seconds, which is how long these loops are. So if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have this loop, and that's just your bass, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts over again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have something where like music comes in here and something happens in the animated loop that seems to match to it. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if you have something where it is actually in the song, instead of being 2 beats, it actually is like something that runs 4 beats. It could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you could go back to the original pacing where you don't have that extra bit. If it's like every other 4 count, you have it coming in and out. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's the intention of these. And I have a long form thing. I'm getting closer to being done with it, but I'm not 100% done. This animation was done a little bit more intentionally because there's a section coming up in the long form edit where it just goes, so I wanted something to be constant on screen, which is why previous ones that I was working on loop-wise before this didn't have a constant form on there. It just either was blank or a solid color in the background. And where's GIFs? So like this one starts and ends with pink, and it doesn't really feel like it, but it does just sort of reset at the end of each loop. But it's busier because there's more stuff happening, but it doesn't. It's more varied, so it doesn't work well for a. But this does work. I can't do that forever. So yeah, that's hopefully explaining what I'm going on about in a way that makes enough sense. There's a lot of stuff with animation and video where the feeling and the expression of the sound changes with the visuals, and the visuals change with the sound. And it's something that I used to not spend really any time reflecting on. Like I knew that it was, but then it and like I started doing it, and it completely changes like what the visual feels like to change the sound out, which makes sense, but to an extent that I, having not done really any sound design sort of stuff or making music to go with stuff, I didn't want to admit it because I was more focused on the visual elements of it. But anytime that I would add certain sounds, it would change the sense of the loop and all that. Yeah, so most of the songs that I've been setting to these loops when I post them, they are either from the long form mix or they're from other mixes or other songs that I have that are 120 BPMs. So they fit with the flow of it all. Sometimes not, but yeah. And then for the time lapse edits, that's just odds and ends of music, usually stuff that's a little bit more active to make it feel like things are moving faster than they are. But I got a lot of music that's backlogged that I've made over a couple of years because I try to make music to post every weekday, which that brings me to me promoting myself as much as I tend to. If you want to watch this stream or other streams in full, you can watch them here on YouTube under the live panel or whatever. If you'd switch over to that bit, where you can find more resources about what specifically. This methodology, I don't know if there's anything that's really like clearly out there. But if you're interested in people who have done sound mixed with abstract animation, I really like the work of Norman McLaren, and he did sound work where I'm not sure how familiar you are with different technical processes of time. I'm what I think is informed, and then someone comes along and they're like, "Do you know about this?" And I was like, "I had no idea." Relationship of animation and music. Okay, you should look into Norman McLaren. I'll type it in the chat so you can see it. Norman McLaren. McLaren. He has a lot of work that is easy to find now on like YouTube and stuff because he did work for the National Film Board of Canada, and they have like their channel and stuff. But if you search for him, you can find like little short documentaries where he talks about the relationship of. I also got more into doing sound design because I bought an oscilloscope, which is a tool that's used to visualize waveforms, either electric waveforms. So it's if you ever have seen like a music visualizer that shows a waveform of sound as something like wee 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 wee, it kind of looks like a heart rate monitor or something. It's electrical impulses being visualized by sending that signal to electromagnets in a older in a CRT. Anyway, it pulls how saying this weird because I'm thinking about it whatever way. Anyway, I did work with oscilloscopes, and so I started to see more of a relationship of the waveform and what a sound is like, and that's very much a thing for what Norman McLaren was doing, because uh, optical soundtracks on film, to make it so you wouldn't have stuff run out of sync on film, you would have like your it's on Super 8 film. It's probably the easiest sort of thing to come across, but like if these are your frames on 35 millimeter film and you got your little sprocket holes or whatever on the side, to one of the sides of the film you would have the optical track, which is that waveform. And Norman McLaren didn't have money to record his audio and then have it put onto here, so he painted it, because it would be read optically by like this little, I forget what the machine is called, but it would take that waveform and like how a record needle picks up the physical movement that's in the engraving as transfer, like the sound wave being cut into the vinyl, or I guess pressed. Then this one would save it as like a visual thing, and it would be picked up by something that's some sort of camera-like thing, but it would convert that energy into sound. And so on the side, you would have like these sorts of things, and it would be picked up. Let me turn off these. I don't need them currently. I'll get a new piece of paper. So it would have the waveform, but what he did is he didn't have money for it, so he would just paint instead. And so when you get into some of that stuff or into electronic music, there are waveforms that look like what they sound like. The sort of most basic waveform that you come into that is the most natural sounding is like a sine wave, which just evenly goes up and down, and it just sounds like a whistle or something. So it would be like a that's probably a sine wave. If you were to whistle and look at an oscilloscope or something, it would have just that curvy sort of form. And then you have triangle waves, which sound pretty similar to a sine wave. They're much smoother than other waves that you have in electronic music. Then you have a sawtooth wave, which sounds kind of harsh, and it's something that doesn't occur naturally in the world for generating sound waves. Because if you're thinking about how sound is created, it's air pushing and pulling and creating vibration. And sine wave has a very natural thing because it would push, it would accelerate in a direction and then sort of slow down and then return, slow down, and you'd have that sort of form. And this is similar, but not exactly that. But if you're thinking of something pushing and pulling, it makes sense. When you get into a sawtooth wave, it goes up, down, and it's an unnatural way for sound to be produced. And then you also have pulse waves, which are on, off, on, off, on, off. And so it's even less natural because it's, as soon as it hits here, it's down. And so it's just, you get different sounds out of these. And when Norman McLaren painted on the optical soundtrack, he would just like paint shapes, and there's a distinct and direct relationship between what those shapes look like and what they sound like. If you have something that's round, then it sounds round. If you have something that's pointy, it sounds pointy. If it's tall, it's louder because it's representative of something that's pushing the air further and stronger, more quickly. And so getting into that, I also got into using an oscilloscope to just sort of see what stuff looked like and producing like mathematic sounds and odds and ends. There's also on the oscilloscope that I have, which I don't have a way to display it right now, and I don't have a connection to it that works. It has two inputs, and so you can use that to compare two different waveforms. You can combine them together, see what they look like with that. It also has a function where one of the inputs does vertical deflection and one does horizontal deflection, and I use that to create visuals through some programs that I found, because if I don't know how to sort of go about it, but if you have an input and an output that is affecting the vertical and horizontal deflection, you can use those combined to make shapes. So if you, I think the simplest one is having a sine and a cosine wave together, which are trigonomic functions. And if you have a sine and a cosine wave that are playing at the same time, the plot that is being pushed in like one direction is going to be going like smoothly up and down, and the other one is going smoothly left and right, and it ends up with a circle if you have a sine and cosine wave at the same time. Sort of both over-explaining and not explaining these things, so if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. But oscilloscopes are fun to mess with. Pure Data is an easy program to, well, easy enough program to get into. It's a visual programming language, and there's a lot of resources for that, for building out like your own digital synth. But what I mostly use, because it's a lot easier, is I use Korg Gadget on my Switch, is what I use to make music. So like, is this, yeah, that's side B. I like analog stuff, and so which program? There's Pure Data is the free one that's open source, and then the one that I use for making music is Korg Gadget. Korg Gadget is a paid program. I have it for my Nintendo Switch, and I like it because it has you can use touchscreen stuff, and it's easy enough to work within that format. It also has like sampled stuff and built-in effects and odds and ends, where you could very slowly build that out, or find people who have done some version of it in Pure Data. But Pure Data, you can do more with it potentially, but it has a lot steeper of what do you call it? Like entry level. It's not. It takes a lot more work to get anything to start to exist in that program. But it is open source. You can also use it for other things. It's a nodule-based visual programming language, so you can like pull in different functionalities, and it'll be like you pull in a slider that has an input to like a frequency or something, and you can click and drag. It's on for desktop, and then you can change what the values are to make this like 1 to 0.5, and then drag a little thing on here, and then that will affect like the frequency of a waveform if you're using it to do that. But you can use it for other things. You can also use it with MIDI inputs if you ever got into using a MIDI controller or something like that, or if I don't know too much about it interfacing with like micro, or what are they called, microcontrollers, whatever, like an Arduino or something. I'm guessing you could get it working with that. I don't think I ever did, but Um, open source stuff is very nice for what you can do with it, but it's also got a steep learning curve. That's what the word is. It's a pretty steep learning curve. If you're not familiar with the sorts of things in there, and Core Gadget, you can just mess with and get something that sounds pretty robust relatively quickly. Now I can do my spiel thing. If you have other questions, throw them out. I like answering questions. I like talking about process. But if you want to watch this stream or other streams from this year and streams moving forward, you can watch them on YouTube and that space. If you want to buy stuff from me, you can go to my web store, traceloops.com/store. If you want to purchase something and have it shipped outside of the US, you can email me, traceloops@traceloops.com. You can also email me with comments, concerns, questions, curiosities, commissions, etc., etc. Again, that is traceloops@traceloops.com. If you want to follow me on other platforms, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, Spotify, all of those places. I am Traceloops, TRACELOOPS. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Traceloops, where you will find older stream recordings. You'll also find high-resolution versions of artwork that I create during streams. In the case of something like today, it would be the scans that I took full resolution. You can look at them. At higher tiers on Patreon, you get new songs from me weekdays, and at the highest tier, you get a monthly postcard from me with original artwork on the front, little message on the back, and a discount to my web store. I do freelance. It's a mix of work. I like it and dislike it. Like, there's good and bad things about any sort of job. But I like having the freedom to do whatever and pursue things and then figure out what real applications it has sort of after the fact. I think that's it for today. There's a chance that I don't stream tomorrow, so I might hesitate to do like a preview guy for tomorrow. Depends on whether or not an appointment I have goes on time. And when I get back, I imagine I should be good, but not always the case. So I'm not gonna do not gonna schedule a live stream for tomorrow. But if I'm back by 3, then I'll just do it without doing a scheduled bit. Any other questions or anything? If there are no more questions, then I'll head out. I'm really into process of stuff, so experimental animation lends itself to exploring different processes a little bit more than if you were doing narrative or more representational animation. I have like a mixed sort of background for what art I pursue that's like both commercial, graphic, and some fine art, and so it's like the intersection of a bunch of different formats and styles that really it's just recording small changes in a controlled environment, and that's comforting to me. So I think that's why I like experimental animation stuff. I do some that's representational, but it's really like exploring process and form with incremental changes, and I really like the motion that comes about as a result of it. If you have any other questions, you can email me, traceloops@traceloops.com, or send me a DM on Instagram is probably the best option for that. But I think I'm gonna head out. Thanks for watching, and have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Adios.